Okay, guys, welcome to this week's Friday Waffle. I hope you're all fine. I'm okay. Yeah, weather. I don't know what's going on with the weather. I mean, was it 2 weekends ago? It was roasting, absolutely roasting. In fact, it wasn't even 2 weekends ago. I'm talking rubbish. It was last Saturday. It was really warm because me and my daughter went to play crazy golf, and this week the weather has just turned so cold. In fact, I was out earlier on, and when I came home, just before I got home in the car, it actually popped up with a warning frost message. Mental. So hopefully it's going to get warmer because I mean we're almost, well, where are we now? We're almost into May, you know, and then you always think of June as being the summertime. So hopefully, yeah, the weather's going to get better. But I hope you're all good. I'm week 2 into my new job. Still enjoying it, thankfully. But I'm knackered. I'm absolutely knackered. I mean, there's been so much information that has been getting passed to me, and you know, trying to take it all on is you've just got to try and break it down and absorb it as best you possibly can. But no, it's all good. It's all good. What have I been doing? I went out for a run yesterday, which was good. I've got back in touch with a guy that I used to run with quite a few years ago. We used to do ultras together, so got back in touch with him, and we actually met for a coffee a couple of nights ago. And he's basically starting back from scratch again as well. So we've decided we're going to tie up 3 times a week, probably Tuesday, Thursday and Sunday. Oh, I've got hiccups, pardon me. So yeah, good to get out. Only did 3 miles, but you know what, it all counts, you know. So it is going to be a short waffle tonight because I've not been. Have I played any games at all? I've played a couple of games on my new MAME cab. Still loving it. Still really enjoy having the vertical aspect. So it means you can get to play things like 1942 and all the vertical shooters. Play them on a big screen the way they're supposed to be played. So it's all good. So good. So yeah, listen, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hammer straight into the questions from last week. So kicking things off, got the Highlander. Lemmy is a good one. What about Mark Chopper Reed? Yeah, reference my was it a goatee beard? I don't know what it is. It's a beard of sorts. My girlfriend actually quite likes it now. She says, she actually quite likes it. She hated it until she saw it, then she thinks it looks alright. To be fair, I think it looks alright. So, anyway, yeah, Lemmy's a good one. What about Mark the Chopper Reed? I've just googled Mark the Chopper Reed, and apparently he was a serial killer. So, yeah. Next week's waffle question. If you had to make a game soundtrack compilation album, which 10 tracks would you have on it? Now, I'm assuming you mean 10 video game soundtracks rather than real music. As I've always said, I'm not a massive fan of music in video games, but you know, I suppose if I was to sort of try and think of my 10 kind of favourite game tracks, I'd have Terra Cresta, I would have Commando, the C64 version of Commando Sid tune, I would have Monty on the Run, I would have, what else would I have? I'd have Rolling Thunder. Rolling Thunder's probably the best one ever. I would have a couple of tracks from Magical Sound Shower, a couple of tracks from Outrun, I would think. What else? Even stuff like Gyrus. Fantastic. You know, really adds to the ambience. Right, okay, next question is from Panther UK. For the next one, what do you think was the most important development during the 8-bit era? Now, I mean, there's different ways to think of that. You could say, well, what was the best? What was the best bit of hardware? Was it the best console? Was it the best computer? I think, if I'm being honest, I think I would have to go for. I would have to go for the ZX Spectrum 48K. Possibly the ZX81 before it, but no, I think the ZX Spectrum 48K. Now, the reason for that is because until Clive Sinclair started making computers, they were very, very much they were an expensive thing. They weren't something that your average family could afford. I mean, you know, they were hundreds of pounds. They were for geeks. They were for people who could build their own computers, and they were way out the price range of your average family. But then Sir Clive came along with his Z80, ZX80. Is it ZX80? I can't. Yeah, ZX80, which I think was the sort of the first kind of affordable computer. Obviously, it wasn't powerful at all. It was horrendously underpowered. But you know, for I think it was like 60, 70 quid if you built your own. I think it was maybe 20 quid more if you got somebody to build it for you, or you bought it pre-built. Then the ZX81 came along, and that kind of made these things even more popular again. It was still a really, really affordable price. But then the ZX Spectrum came along. Initially 16K, or did they bring out, I think they brought out 16K and 48K both at the same time. I don't know what the difference in price was. But quickly the ZX, the 16K one kind of, you know, I think it stopped getting made. But at that point, when the ZX Spectrum came out, that became the affordable computer. I mean, yeah, the keyboard was rubbish, the sound was virtually non-existent, but you know what, it had a good programming language, it was totally open-ended, and it was like an open book for all these people who, you know, these clever programmers. They wanted to be able to make their own video games. And I was watching Bedrooms to Billions a couple of weeks ago, and one of the guys was basically saying how prior to the ZX Spectrum coming along, everything it was like finite, you know, so many sprites, so many like channels, and there was limitations on everything, and you had to basically work within the confines of these limitations. And then it says the ZX Spectrum came along, and it was basically a processor, a keyboard, and 48K, and it was like a blank piece of paper with a pen. You could make it whatever you want, and that in itself really, really opened up the creativity. You know, I never tried to program because I'm crap. I'm rubbish. But people who wanted to tinker suddenly had this thing at their fingertips, and it was the Spectrum that basically led to the bedroom coding, which then led on to the industry becoming what it was and what it is today. You know, and I firmly believe that if it wasn't for the ZX Spectrum, I think the industry, certainly in the UK, would be a different industry from what it was, because all these guys, they all started off on these machines. Now I know you could say the C64 was the same, but the thing is, the thing about the C64, it was expensive. In comparison to the Spectrum, it was expensive. I mean, I bought my own one. You know, there was simply no way my mum and dad were going to buy me a Spectrum. Buy me a C64. So the Spectrum was really the first decent, powerful. I mean, it was powerful for its time. Home computer. It was infinitely affordable. I mean, I think the ZX Spectrum 48K was at £125, and I think you could get the 16K one for like less than 100. So for less than £100, you could have a computer in your home, and that was a massive, massive thing. And I really do believe that because of that, because of the price structure, that really, it helped to really kickstart the video games industry in the UK. And as we all know, you know, I mean, yeah, although the industry was alive and kicking in America, there are so many awesome programmers that write games for, you know, current systems, and they started off on the ZX Spectrum. So yeah, I would say, to answer your question, Panther, I would say the invention of the ZX Spectrum, I would say that was probably the biggest, most important development that happened during the 8-bit era. In my opinion only. Anyway, thanks Chris for the question. You oldie gamer Steve, great waffle as usual, mate. Question for you. What were the first 8 and 16-bit games you ever completed without cheating? Now this, I'm not going to have to think very hard because I completed very, very, very few games. I've completed very few games in my time. I'm trying to think of games that I've completed on the C64. Now I can't remember what came first. Two early games that I completed on the C64. One was, or 3 games, was Robin of the Wood by Odin Graphics. The second one was Bruce Lee by Datasoft, and the third one was Castle Wolfenstein, and I think I also completed Return to Castle, or Beyond Castle Wolfenstein. I'm trying to think when I got what. I think what do you call it, Robin of the Wood, that was later on. That was definitely later on. I think it was probably Castle Wolfenstein. I didn't buy the game, I got a copy of it, so it was an early game. So yeah, when I first got my disc drive, I got a lot of copied games from a guy called Brian, and that was one of them, because I do remember going out and buying Bruce Lee in disc. So it must have been Castle Wolfenstein. Then I did eventually complete Beyond Castle Wolfenstein as well. So that was probably my first computer game that I completed on the 8-bit. 16-bit, oh blimey. I've completed so few games, partly because I'm pish, and partly because I just tend to kind of lose. If I still got some coffee, I have. Excuse me a second. And partly because I just get bored very easily. I get stuck and I lose interest. 16-bit, I'm just trying to think of games that I've completed. Not many. I'm thinking... Christ. I'm thinking Dune 2. That's probably one of the... That's actually quite embarrassing when I think of how much a video gamer I have been. I mean, I've been playing video games since kind of the early 80s, and I've completed so few games. So I think Dune 2 on the Amiga was one that I definitely completed. I mean, I completed things like, you know, Doom 2, Heretic, what else? I think I completed Duke Nukem as well, but they were all on the PC. So nah, I'd probably have to be Castle Wolfenstein on 8-bit and Dune 2 on the Commodore Amiga. So, thank you, Steve. Excuse me, Del Boy, I still think you look like the Master from Doctor Who. Oh, bearded one, biker Grovey. Excuse me. Right, Milthy Swinbuckle, pardon me. Do you think that when arcade games became coin munchers, this was the start of their decline? Or is the decline more to do with home machines catching up in power and being able to match their specs? If these are the reasons, which do you think played the biggest part for the downfall? And can you think of any other reasons? No, you know what, Milthy, I think I would absolutely agree with the second option. I mean, coin coin ops. Arcade games have always been coin munchers. That's what they are. That's, you put money in and you play the game, and then, you know, obviously the later games in the 90s, you got continues, you got things like Gauntlet, which you had to basically put money in. You couldn't, Gauntlet, it wouldn't matter how good you were, Gauntlet was basically on a timer. It was like a clock. You had certain length of time, although it was, instead of time, it was energy, but obviously you lose that all the time. So things like Gauntlet and Cut, well, you had to put money in. But most of the kind of modern games, your R-types and all that, they've all got continues. So they were always going to munch money. What was why did the arcades decline? I think there is no two ways about it. I think the fact that, you know, back in the early days, when you got your Spectrum, your C64, your Dragon 32, whatever it was you had, it was always a pale imitation of the arcade version. You know, you had that sneaky sales technique where they would bring out an arcade game and they would have a picture of the arcade on the back, and it would say arcade version, home versions may vary. Yeah, really? You mean home versions are going to look nothing like the arcade ones? So yeah, at that point people were still playing, you know, putting money into machines, because, you know, you could play Commando on your C64, but if you wanted the real thing, you would play the arcade one. But I think, I'm trying to think, I would say probably when, I mean, the Commodore Amiga was a great machine. It still is a good machine. One of my favourite machines. But it's still, I mean, it could, in the right hands, it could do really, really good arcade conversions. I mean, things like Rodland, dare I say, Rainbow Islands. You know, it could do arcade perfect conversions, but generally, though the versions were good, they were never arcade perfect. But I would say once things like the probably the Sega Mega Drive, the SNES, and certainly when like the PlayStation came out, the Sega Saturn came out, these were machines that could basically play or equal the arcade. You know, I mean, when the PlayStation came out, I remember seeing Ridge Racer for the first time, and it absolutely blew my mind that, excuse me, here was a machine that was effectively playing this state of the art arcade game. And then of course, you know, you got all your sort of like your polygons, you had all your, you know, your snowboarding games, your driving games. They did look almost, maybe slightly lower res, but they did play and they did look almost as good as arcades. Then I think when we got to, like, I would say probably the Xbox 360, the PlayStation 3, when that generation came out, it was game over, because these machines could do an arcade perfect version. The games that came out, racing games that came out on the Xbox 360, were just as good as any arcade game. I remember that one of the defining moments for me was I just got the original Xbox, and I got Outrun 2, and I thought it was a great game. And then I went on holiday and there was an arcade Outrun 2, and you know what? It was identical. I could not see any difference at all. And so at that point, the arcades, I think, were defeated, because why would anybody want to go and put a lot of money into an arcade game when you could play the game at home? And I think, you know, I mean, I obviously, as I've mentioned a million times before, where I stayed, I was nowhere near arcades, so I couldn't really comment on witnessing the decline of the arcade. But yeah, at that point, I mean, the thing about the arcades in the sort of mid-90s, early 2000s, two-dimensional games, your, you know, Phoenix, Space Invaders, Galaxian, two-dimensional games were kind of old hat. Nobody wanted to play them. It was all about, you know, polygon 3D games, and we were something like the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3 could do them perfectly, and they look just as good. So, no, I think, to answer your question, Milfy, I think the fact that home systems were able to match the power in an arcade, that was the death knell of the arcades. I mean, I've not been into an arcade for quite a long time. I'm trying to think. I was down at Play Blackpool maybe 2-3 years ago, and we went into the arcades, and they're just terrible. I mean, it's just full of money grabbing machines, games where you earn tickets that you can redeem for some real shitty prizes, and I really don't think. I honestly don't think we're ever going to see arcades taken off again, not for video games, because how can they? I mean, you know, when you look at what we've got now, what we can play now at home, it's stunning. I mean, something like the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5 is way better than any arcade game that ever came out. I don't mean it's a better game, but from a kind of graphical point of view, colour point of view, sharpness, everything, yeah, I think as soon as the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3 came along, that was it. The arcades were they were dead. So thank you, Milfy. That's a good question. Delboy, great waffle. I can answer a lot of the questions raised on 3D, what you actually own, etc. But we can chat about that another time. Anyway, question. There is a difference between a retro collector and a retro hobbyist who likes to play around with emulators and games. What would be your one piece of advice to both a collector and a casual retro hobbyist? Hopefully that question makes sense, and I feel new viewers would value your opinion on this. I mean, I've got quite a sizable collection of, not so much games. I mean, I don't know how many games I've got. I have got a lot of games. I don't know, maybe 500 games, which isn't that many compared to some people. But I do have a really good collection of hardware, but I'm not a collector. I never ever deem myself as a collector. A collector to me is somebody who would rather pay extra money to have some game or piece of hardware in a box that they can put in a shelf or put in a cupboard. So yeah, whilst I do have a lot of hardware, I've always bought it to play it. And alright, I know I don't play a lot of my systems, but I've never bought anything just to have. I've never ever done that. And it's the same with games, and that's why I don't. If I can get away with downloading a ROM than buying a game, I'll quite happily play a ROM. I'm really not that bothered about having the box to look at. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I do like having my games over there. It is nice to be able to pick up a game off your shelf, look at the back of the box, open it up, look at the instructions. So I would term myself as the latter, which, what did you say it was? A retro hobbyist. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I spend all my time talking about systems, talking about video games. I actually spend very little time actually playing them. A retro collector is somebody, like I says, who they may not have any interest in playing them, but they like to collect. Whereas a retro hobbyist is somebody who actually likes to play games. I mean, you're mentioning there, Dale, about playing around with emulators and that kind of stuff. So I'm absolutely the latter. What would be your one piece of advice to both collector and casual retro hobbyist? I don't know. I mean, I probably can't really. I'm not really in a position to comment or issue advice on a collector's point of view because I'm not a collector. What I would say is, if you are wanting to become a collector of kind of games, etc., you've probably come into the hobby at quite a bad time, because the whole retro scene I did speak about this fairly recently. It's exploded. I mean, there are so many channels of people talking about retro games. You can't go into Facebook without getting plagued with people trying to sell arcade games, brand new bits of hardware made to look like classic retro games, and so the market is huge now. It really is. So to try and, if you're just a collector, to try and build a collection up now is going to cost you quite a bit of money. It really is. I mean, I don't know if you were wanting to collect systems. Again, I'm probably not the right person to really give advice on this. Right now, excuse me, I touched on it earlier on. The Xbox 360 and the PS3 right now is probably the cheapest systems to buy at the moment. I mean, you quite literally, you could probably get a PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 for 20 quid, if that, second hand. Go to CEX and you'll get, go with £10 and I guarantee you'll be able to get about 10, if not more games for £10. Games are as cheap as chips. Don't get me wrong, there are one or two kind of pricier games, but on average you'll pay probably between 50 pence and £1 for an Xbox game or an Xbox 360 game. I mean, about 2 years ago, I just basically I watched a few videos telling you what, you know, the best kind of Xbox 360 games, and I kind of built up my collection. So I've probably got about, I don't know, 150 games. But yeah, these two collections, that kind of era right now is dirt cheap. If you want to start, I think, I'm not 100% sure, I think the PlayStation 2, PlayStation 1 is starting to get a bit pricier to buy for. The GameCube, for whatever reason, has always been, it's never really been cheap to buy for. I think because the GameCube never really sold that well. Games seem to really hold their value, but in most kind of Nintendo games, even the Wii or the Wii U, any game that's got Mario or Donkey Kong in it, they still tend to hold their value. If you're wanting to collect things like the C64, Spectrum, any kind of 8-bit machines, even 16-bit machines, like, you know, the Atari ST, the Commodore Amiga, all these systems, your disc-based systems, your Sega Saturns, your Dreamcasts, your 3DOs, they all go for quite a lot of money. So, and forget the Vectrex, don't even think about the Vectrex, that goes for daft money. You're talking probably £300 upwards for a system. Games go for about 60, 70, 80 quid, depending on the sort of the condition of the box. Controllers go for stupid money. So yeah, if you want to get into collecting, then I would probably say you need to go with the Xbox 360 or PS3. If you're wanting to be a retro gaming hobbyist, then you know what, given what I've just told you about the price of hardware, you know, unless you've got deep pockets, you may not want to buy original hardware. Now, like I said, I've got a lot of original hardware and I do enjoy playing it. You can't beat it. You can't beat playing a game on an original C64 rather than an emulator. However, it's a great time to just want to, if you're not interested in owning original hardware or original games, it's a fantastic time to be a gamer, because for not a lot of money, for about 50, 60 quid, you can buy yourself a RetroPie or a Raspberry Pi, sorry, put RetroPie in it, and you've got access to, like, you know, literally thousands and thousands and thousands of games, arcade games, you name it, you can play it. If you've got a, you know, not even a decent PC, if you've got a fairly modern PC, i.e. something that's maybe less than 5 years old, you can download all emulators, you can download all the ROMs if you know where you're going. Don't ask me, just Google is your friend. But you can basically build up a phenomenal collection of systems and games for basically nothing. Like I said, if you want to spend maybe 50, 60 quid, get yourself a Raspberry Pi, you can play it in that. Yeah, I think that's kind of my advice. You know, fortunately I got into kind of buying hardware fairly early on, so I've never paid a lot of money. I mean, you know, I got my Vectrexes for like 100 quid with games and that as well, so I was really lucky. I mean, Steve Benway, He's got an amazing collection of hardware. I think he's still got it, but he kind of built it up, you know, spent pennies. He's got like a Jupiter Ace, which was it was a terrible computer. I think it ran fourth, I think it was, and it was an awful computer. But because it sold so few, I think it was something like 60, 70 quid. It goes for an absolute fortune. I think it goes for like £200-300 now. And Steve managed to build up a really good collection of hardware for not very much. But like I says, you know, if you're around 20 years ago, you'd pick up a Commodore Amiga for 30 quid. Now you're probably looking at about £100. If you want, excuse me, if you want an A1200, then you need to expect to pay more. So yeah, hopefully that kind of makes a bit of sense. Like I said, I'm not the best person to really give advice when it comes to collecting per se, but yeah, hopefully that will kind of help you start off anyway. Ian Hunter, hi Alan, a question for the next waffle. Due to the unavailability of the next generation consoles, would you ever consider buying an Xbox One X instead of a Series X? I'm thinking about this as my Xbox One hard drive is full. Honestly, Ian, I've got an Xbox One, which I've been playing. I've got a PlayStation 4. Right now, I have got absolutely no interest whatsoever buying any more modern console. I mean, I've watched a few videos of like the PlayStation 5, and yeah, it does look amazing. It does look amazing. There's no two ways about it. Am I interested in buying one? Not right now. I don't know. Will I end up getting one? Probably. You know, but I'm going to I don't mind waiting for another year or another couple of years, whatever, to buy one. I've always kind of jumped in and paid kind of top dollar for one, but I don't want to do that because I've really got no interest in playing the game. So, to answer your question, Ian, would I ever consider buying an Xbox One X instead of a Series X? Can I be honest? I actually don't know what the difference is. That's how I'm so out of touch when it comes to kind of current stuff. I don't even know what the difference is. I know the Xbox One was like the PlayStation 4 Xbox. You know, it was like the first of that generation of console. But I don't even know what the difference between the One X instead of the Series X. I really don't know, mate. So sorry for a pretty kind of pants answer, Ian. And lastly, let's have a wee look down the rabbit hole. Thank you, Kev. Hi Alan, some controllers like the North American SNES and certain PS1 add-ons have convex buttons along with concave buttons. Do you prefer one type over the other, or do you even notice the difference? You probably know me well enough, Kev. You know what? It doesn't really bother me. It honestly doesn't bother me. I mean, when I pick up a controller, I don't even. I mean, there's the Xbox controller. I mean, I use that a lot. When I'm playing all my emulators on my PC. So yeah, that's the buttons is concave round like that, and the other one convex, or it's convex like that, and concave's inside. Anyway, it doesn't matter. One kind of goes in the way and one goes out the way. I'll be honest, Kev. It's not something I don't really notice the difference. And does it really make much up? Does it really bother me too much what one's what? I can't say I do, Kev. No, I don't. Secondly, any thoughts about the Evercade, which is a series of handhelds, and now they have a home console coming out. The Evercade, is that not... now wait a minute. Yeah, is the Evercade the little handheld that you get, little gaming packs? You get like a Namco pack. Let me have a quick wee look. Let me just bring that one up here actually. The Evercade. Right, yeah, the Evercade is a handheld game concept developed and manufactured by UK company Blaze. They were probably pretty pants. It focuses on retro gaming with ROM cartridges that each contain a number of emulated games. Yeah, right, I'm going to jump back to so I can see what I'm looking at here. Kev, I think I've got that much hardware, I've got that many options to play these games that, you know, I've got various handhelds. I really don't have any real interest in something like that. I mean, I do, as much as I don't have any interest in kind of modern things like that, I do like the sort of mini versions of things, for the simple reason it allows you a plug and play. You know, you buy yourself, I don't know, whatever it is, an original, I'm trying to think, say that the Commodore 64 for example, if you buy a C64, good luck trying to tune that into a Spectrum, good luck trying to tune that into a modern TV. Yeah, you can buy you know, modern SCART cables, which makes it much easier. So I do like the mini versions, because it does allow you, it allows you to kind of have, you know, people going about, oh, it's not real, it's emulation. Bollocks to that, you know what I mean? It looks like it plays really well. I mean, emulation in the Mega Drive, the SNES Mini is absolutely top notch. It really is. I think I mentioned before, when I was at the computer club a couple of years ago, I took along my SNES Mini, and one of the guys had his SNES, and we put on, I can't remember what game it was it R-Type or something? We put R-Type on both systems, and both of them actually started to kind of, you get slowdown. So the emulation on the SNES is really top notch, and I believe that the Mega Drive is pretty much the same. So it doesn't bother me the fact that it's emulation. Who cares if it's emulation? So yeah, these mini systems are great, because it means that you can basically plug it into your big 55-inch OLED TV and you can play them. So yeah, but as far as the Evercades, they do scratch an itch, and I'm scratching my face. They do serve a purpose, you know, that they're probably really popular. But for me personally, Kev, like I said, I've got that many bits of kind of other hardware. I don't think I really need anything like that. But it's not to say I would rule it out. Maybe once they come down in price, I'll think about it. And finally, I am once again chasing a game that I already own multiple ways, in the hope that this latest revision will make me a more skilled gamer. Do you have any games like that where you keep chasing the dream? In my case, it's another Street Fighter 2 version. Not really, Kev. No, like I said, I don't really buy many modern games now. I mean, I've bought countless, like the Namco collection. I don't know how many Namco collections I've bought over the years. You know, I bought it on the PlayStation, the original PlayStation. I bought it on the PlayStation 2. I bought it on the Xbox. I bought it on the Xbox 360. I don't think I've bought it on the PlayStation 4 that I'm aware of. I think I bought it on the PlayStation 3. I've bought it on the Vita. I've bought it on the Game Boy Advance. You know, the Game Boy 3DS, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, collections like these I've bought time and time again. But I don't think there's any one game that I've bought repeatedly. I mean, what did I buy? I bought Last of Us on the PlayStation 3, and then I bought it on the PlayStation 4, but that's only kind of 2. But yeah, some of these compilations, and I'm sure if I ever do get a PlayStation 5, the first thing I'll do will be I'll buy the Namco collection so I can play Pac-Man. Yeah. Anyway, listen guys, it's getting late, so I'm going to wind this waffle up. I just want to say thank you very much to all the support you guys give me, all the long-term subscribers, and also a big hello and thank you to the kind of modern subscribers, people who've just subscribed to my channel fairly recently. Yeah, it's excellent. Like I said, I wouldn't do it if it wasn't for you guys. I will be back along on Sunday What time? 6 until 8, I think. Yep, 6 until 8. I've not decided what I'm going to play, but I'll put it on Discord and on Facebook. And finally, guys, I hope you have an excellent weekend. And as always, thank you very, very much for watching.